Welcome to the latest episode of Mystery Unsolved. Happy Friday. A little bit of a hiatus last week. I apologize. Not that anyone cares. A little bit of laziness on my part. Could have done the episode, decided not to. No excuse whatsoever. But I am back in full form, although probably not at 100%. A little tired from yesterday, but nevertheless, here on time for Mystery Unsolved. A very interesting case. It comes to you via Unsolved Mysteries. We're talking like, I'm pretty sure we're talking like early Unsolved Mysteries, like 89, 90, 91. Yeah, like first few seasons. Like full on Robert Stack, the good stuff. Tonight's episode is on the mysterious disappearance and death of Charles C. Morgan. The reason I say disappearance and death, although it should probably be death, although I think he did disappear. So we'll get into all that. You probably see me touching my hair because there's a small piece that keeps doing that. But yeah, nevertheless, let us begin Mystery Unsolved, the disappearance and mysterious death of Charles C. Morgan. Because this is an Unsolved Mysteries episode, I am on the Unsolved Mysteries wiki page. That is a thing. It exists. Why don't you do all your episodes from that page, Justin? Because not every single episode I do is an Unsolved Mysteries episode. But when it is, I take advantage of it. I'm trying not to see that glare. You can see the glare over there. All right, here we go. 39-year-old Chuck Morgan was a successful businessman who was the president of his own escrow agency. He was 39 years old. He was the same age as me when he died. And we're off to a great start, aren't we? He was also a potential witness in a state land fraud case involving a known crime boss. On March 22nd, 1977, he left his Tucson, Arizona home to drive two of his daughters to school. After dropping them off, he vanished. 3 days later, okay, so he did disappear. Okay. If I remember correctly, he comes back home and he's been poisoned or something, if I remember correctly. Some strange shit is about to go down. That's all I know. 3 days later, he arrived back at his home. According to his wife, Ruth, he was missing a shoe, had a plastic handcuff around one ankle, and had his hands tied together with a plastic zip tie. He could not speak, but with a pen and paper, he wrote down that he had been kidnapped and tortured. That has to be the most generic, default, bootleg MacGyver attempt at kidnapping and torturing someone I've ever heard. One shoe is missing. A plastic handcuff. Plastic handcuff, not the ones that police officers have. A literal toy handcuff around one ankle. Is that also the ankle that's got the shoe off of it? Probably not. His hands are tied together with a plastic zip tie, not another handcuff. This already sounds like, yeah. He also wrote that a hallucinogenic drug had been painted on his throat. I was today years old to learn that hallucinogenic drugs could be painted on someone's tongue. He claimed that this drug would drive him insane or kill him if he ingested it. He asked Ruth to move his car because he did not want them to know that he had returned home. However, he would not say who they were. He also told her not to call the police because a hit would be put out on the lives of them and their family members. How you guys doing so far, huh? Batshit crazy, right? It gets better. Again, I remember bits and pieces, but I just knew that I wanted to do a case on an episode on this case because it's just so bizarre. For 1 week, Ruth nursed Chuck back to health by feeding him with an eyedropper. Before his voice returned, he began to allude to a secret identity. He claimed that he had worked as an agent for the federal government, and he fought against organized crime. He also claimed that they had taken his treasury identification. He said that he escaped from his captors near Phoenix Sky's Harbor Airport. So it doesn't say how long they've been married, but imagine, being married to your significant other for probably a good amount of time, and your husband comes home, with one shoe, one handcuff around his ankle, plastic handcuff, by the way, a hallucinogenic drug on his tongue, painted with a zip tie. You nurse him back to health, and he tells you that he has a secret identity. How she did not have this man committed, I will never know. After his kidnapping, Chuck became justifiably paranoid. Really? I didn't know. You could have fooled me, Chuck. He began wearing a bulletproof vest and even grew a beard to mask his identity. Imagine being so fucking paranoid that you go out to a military place or wherever they sell bulletproof vests, and you're like, one bulletproof vest, please. Honey, I want to grow out my beard so they don't recognize me. Okay, Chuck. I'm not trying to listen. I'm just trying to provide a little bit of humor to this because, like I said, it's crazy. Like, it just makes so much. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Whoop, hold on. After his kidnapping, Chuck became justifiably paranoid. He began wearing a bulletproof vest and even grew out a beard to further mask his identity. He also started driving his daughters to and from school. He informed the school that nobody else should be allowed to pick them up. Well, the only other person that could possibly pick up your daughters would be their mother. But even that didn't fly with him? And also, I'm pretty sure schools have a very specific policy that you can write down as to who you want to pick your kids up. Like, Joe Smith, the dad, Marge Smith, the wife, Uncle Louie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a process there. No, not every school has that, I guess. On June 7th, 2 months after his initial disappearance, Chuck vanished again. Jesus Christ. Shortly before his second disappearance, he told his father that if anything were to happen to him, there was a letter he had written that would tell them who was responsible. The letter was never found. However, 9 days later, an unidentified woman called Ruth. An unidentified woman called Ruth and said, Chuck is all right. Escholastics 12:1-8. This is a reference to a Bible passage which reads in part, Men are afraid of a high place and terrors on the road. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth, and as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. It gets better. You're probably wondering what the hell this Bible verse has to do with anything, but wait, it gets better. I remember this part. 2 days later, Chuck was found shot to death despite the fact that he was found wearing a bulletproof vest. His body was found in the desert 30 feet off the highway in the San Juan Springs area. He had been shot once in the back of the head with a bullet from his .357 Magnum, which was lying beside him. No fingerprints were found on it. Gunshot residue was found on his left hand, indicating he had fired a weapon. In his car, police found a note that had directions to the crime scene written in his handwriting. Also found in the car were several weapons. ammunition, and a CB radio. CB radio. That's 70s for you right there. For all you millennials who don't know what a CB radio is, Google it. Strangely, a piece of one of his own teeth was found wrapped in a white handkerchief in the back seat. A pair of sunglasses was also found that did not belong to him. It's like it's like that book I Spy. It's just a bunch of miscellaneous items. Like, can you find these? Can you spot these items on the page? Well, can you spot the items on this crime scene? Strangely, Chuck had clipped a $2 bill inside his underwear. Written on the bill were 7 Spanish names from the letters A to G. Also, Ecclesiastes, I'm not gonna pronounce this right. Ecclesiastics 12 was written with the verses 1 through 8 marked by arrows drawn on the bill's serial number. I will read that again in case your mind is just conforming itself, right? Chuck had slipped a $2 bill. $2 bill. Millennials. $2 bills exist. They're very rare. They have the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, on them. You can still use them in stores. Chuck had clipped a $2 bill inside his underwear. What a great place for it. So I don't know if you can hear that, but it's my AC and it's hard to talk over. Hence the reason I stopped talking. This was the same reference that the female caller had made to Ruth on the back of the bill. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were numbered 1 through 7. Also, a crude map was drawn, which showed several roads between Tucson and the Mexican border. What is a crude map? Like vague? The towns Robles Junction and Sasabe were marked. These towns are apparently known for smuggling. 2 days after Chuck's death, an anonymous woman spoke to an officer for the Pima County Sheriff's Department on the telephone. She claimed that he was supposed to meet her at the local motel shortly before he died. She claimed that her nickname was Green Eyes and that she was the same woman that had called Ruth several days earlier. She also claimed that at the motel, Chuck showed her. Wait a minute. She claimed that he was supposed to meet her. She also claimed that at the motel, Chuck showed her. So apparently they did meet at the motel? Did you see that? Supposed to meet, and then they did meet. Or maybe they met once before. Chuck showed her a briefcase containing several thousands of dollars in cash. He said that the money would buy him out of a gang contract that had been put out on his life. Surprisingly, despite the bizarre evidence, authorities ruled that Chuck committed suicide. They believed that he did so either because of financial difficulties or fears for his safety. Do you guys remember where he was shot? Back of the head. Point blank range in the back of the head. Do you know what's pretty much impossible for someone to do? Shoot themselves in the back of the head at point blank range. You can you could probably do that. I suppose well, okay. I stand corrected. I suppose you could, but technically my finger isn't exactly a gun, so imagine if I how would you be able to do that? How would you be able to do that? I'll tell you, police in thinking people committed suicide when it's blatantly obvious that it's not is just baffling to me. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but again, like, you'd have to turn your neck. There would be marks, there would be fingerprints, residue, there would be a whole bunch of shit going on. If and also you'd have to do it at an angle. We're talking this makes as much sense as George Reeves, the guy that played Superman, his death. They said that was a suicide, a superside, a superside for super. Oh my god, I'm sorry, that came out totally wrong. Um, but yeah, like the trajectory of the gun and how he would have shot himself, it doesn't make sense. His family and a reporter named Don Devereaux believe he was murdered. Um, yeah, I haven't even got to the end of this episode, and I'm going to tell you right now, he was fucking murdered. Some investigations also suspect that his death was not a suicide. Some investigators? Whichever investigator doesn't believe that he wasn't murdered is batshit crazy. Shortly after Chuck's death, his impounded car was broken into while it was in police possession. Right, but he killed himself, right? And it's just a coincidence that someone broke into his impounded car to steal shit. Gotta love it. Gotta love police investigating, right? He killed himself. How? Does he have a third? Does he have a third arm going out his back? Around that time, his office was also ransacked. But he killed himself, right? 3 weeks after his death, two men claiming to be FBI agents arrived at the Morgan home. They told Ruth that they had to look through their house. They tore the house apart and searched for quite a while. It is unknown if they ever found anything, or if they were even FBI agents. Did you ask for a search warrant? Did you ask for identification? Clearly, she did not. So, shame on Mrs. Morgan. When Devereaux contacted the FBI, they claimed that they had never ever even heard of Chuck Morgan. There are several rumors surrounding this case, including that Chuck was killed because he was involved with illegal activity or was doing secret work for the government. His death seems just as unexplained as the events leading to it. Suspects. There's a whole bunch of suspects here, but here we go. Although Chuck claimed that he was working against organized crime, some believe that he was actually involved with it. During the 1970s, Tucson, along with other cities in Arizona, became a place that the mafia moved to due to its warm climate and controversial crime justice system. Led by former New York Don Joseph Bonanno, more than 500 racketeers moved to Tucson during the 1970s. Joe Bonanno was a part of the Gambino crime family, if I'm correct. I'm going to need to know this because I'm writing a book on it, but yeah. Their influence led to several gangland style killings in the area, one of the most famous being the murder of, an, of investigative reporter Don Bowles. What made Arizona most attractive to crime syndicates was a unique state law that allowed them to buy land through numbered blind trust accounts. This would allow them to remain anonymous and successfully launder money. Chuck did real estate escrow work for at least one mafia family. They may have used him to do escrow work for purchases of gold bullion and platinum. Gold bullion, say that 5 times fast. There was a mere convenient way for them to launder money. Starting in 1973, it appeared that he was doing several $1 million of escrow work in bullion and platinum. In reality, there was no bullion or platinum. Instead, the money was moved through several escrow accounts and legitimized. So if he was working for the mafia or working, yeah, if he was working with the mafia, why are we still here? Like, well, I mean, obviously, we know why we're still here because it's unsolved. But like, if the, if you think the mafia might be involved, they were probably involved. Like Jimmy Hoffa, we don't know that the mafia killed him, but we think that he was heavily involved with them. On one occasion, Chuck mentioned to Ruth that money laundering was occurring in Tucson. However, he claimed that he was not involved in it. He also stated that the less she and the children knew about his activities, the better it would be for them. It is theorized that Chuck Morgan was killed by members of organized crime in the Tucson area. It is possible that the mafia family that he worked for had him killed because he knew too much. One theory is that organized crime bosses put the word out that they wanted Chuck dead. A hitman told Chuck, so he came up with the money in order to buy the hitman off. However, when the two met in the desert, the hitman killed him anyway and took the money. This theory has not been confirmed. Although it is not mentioned in the segment, Chuck was a secret witness in an extensive land fraud investigation and was interviewed about it in May of 1977, shortly before his death. It is not known if this had anything to do with his death. Also not mentioned was the fact that Chuck had been seen at several restaurants and motels on the west side of Tucson after his disappearance and before his death. On results, unsolved. It is still unsolved to this day, but there's more. Wait, there's more. After the case aired, Unsolved Mysteries received several calls relating to Chuck's death. Don Devereaux investigated several leads that came up to a result of the program. He learned that Chuck was heavily involved in the money laundering activities through his Tucson escrow company. From 1973 to his death in 1977, he was also involved in large gold and platinum transactions. He apparently received a large amount of money from these activities, and some of the money allegedly came from Southeast Asia. Devereaux discovered that Chuck kept duplicate records of the illicit transactions. Devereaux now believes that Chuck was killed because he still had these records. 3 months after the broadcast, Doug Johnston found shot to death in his car outside of his Phoenix office. Interestingly, he worked across the street from Devereaux's office and drove an almost identical car. Devereaux now believes that he was supposed to be killed instead of Doug. A year after Doug's murder, Devereaux was contacted by a writer from D.C. named Danny Castellaro. He agreed to share his information that he had uncovered about Chuck's illegal gold transactions. However, Danny died suspiciously before he received the information. All three cases remain unsolved. Sadly, Chuck's widow, Ruth Morgan, died in 2006. So not only did he get killed, but Don Devereaux was attempted to get shot at. And mistaken identity, that guy got killed. And the guy that had information for Don Devereaux about Chuck Morgan, he ended up dead. Whole bunch of crazy shit, right? All right. Here are our theories. Suicide is not a fucking theory. It is a dumbass act. It is absolutely dumb. Throwing that out. Do we think the mob? It's the mob, right? It's the mob. They wanted to shut him up, and because the mob was the mob back in the day, if they killed you, if they wanted to make you disappear, you would be. Hence the reason we're still talking about it today as an unsolved mystery. Like there are little things, there are little breadcrumbs that could lead us to believe, like, hey, we think the mafia is involved here, which I very much do. But at the end of the day, there's not enough evidence. It's all circumstantial, and we don't know. But obviously, based off of what this says, credible sources, various people think so. I myself think that Charles C. Morgan was murdered by the mob because he either had records that he still shouldn't have had, or that he had information and they just pretty much wanted him dead. What do you think? What do you think happened to Charles C. Morgan? Do you think he was murdered? Do you think he killed himself? Do you think he was murdered by the mob? Or perhaps another person with a grudge? Another group? Unnamed? Do let me know in the comments below. You won't, but maybe you will. I do hope you enjoyed this episode of Mystery Unsolved, the mysterious disappearance and death of Charles C. Morgan. It has been a very interesting and intriguing episode, to say the least. Do stay tuned for next week's episode, as it will be on the post office scandal. I'm not even sure that this is a unsolved mystery, but it was brought to my attention. So I will look into it. In the off chance that it's not really an unsolved mystery, I will probably have another case to do. But in the meantime, for Mystery Unsolved, this has been Justin the Engineer. Have a good